Hello friends, this video will be a little bit different. There won't be as many jokes or funny pictures. Unfortunately, this one is serious. As many of you know, I'm a huge fan of the CZ P10 C. It's my favorite striker-fired pistol. But about a week ago, I took it to the range with the intent of comparing it to the Glock 45. So I shot my Glock 45 range review, and I wasn't able to shoot the comparison between the CZ and the Glock afterward because the CZ had a major catastrophic parts failure. I apologize for the length of the video that I'm about to show you from the range day. There is minimal editing so that you can see me discovering the problem. This is why I started making these videos. I'm trying to bring you information that will hopefully contribute to our collective firearms knowledge. There's never been a better time to buy a high quality firearm, but things break and we need to know when and why. So let's take a look at what happened.
Oh, that's bad. That's very bad indeed, everyone. Oh yeah, that is no good. Having some technical difficulties with the P10 C. That's not good. Broken striker. We're gonna have to email CZ. That is bad. That is very, very, very bad. So that tells us something about the P10 C right there, doesn't it? That tells us something very important. Yeah, I don't want to say for definitively that it's the striker, but I would say it's the striker. The trigger pull feels a little bit strange. Let's try it one more time. Yeah, it's the firing pin isn't even impacting the primer at all. That's no good. Come in here and see if we can diagnose what might be going on. Yeah, the firing pin isn't coming out to actually impact the primer. That's bad. That's real bad. So I didn't know this was happening, and if I had gone to defend my life with the CZ, bad stuff would have happened. Really bad stuff. I'd be dead, I guess. I don't know. Something would happen. Let's keep trying it, but it looks like mostly today we are going to be talking about the Glock, because the Glock is probably not going to have such a catastrophic problem. Yeah, I can feel that something is still going wrong, but hey, let's keep trying it, shall we? Nope. That's bad. Bad indeed. Okay, well, good old Glock. Here we go. I almost stuck this thing on my bedside table last night. I'm really glad I didn't. I'd gotten a little bit too comfortable with it, I think. So let's take these same bullets and put them in the Glock magazine. Because you know that the Glock's gonna work. And by the way, I will be putting this up unedited on the internet.
As you saw, it initially looked like I was getting light primer strikes. So I checked the primers and I saw no dimples. Based on the feel of the trigger, I could tell that something in the striker assembly was just not quite right. So let's take a look at the striker assembly and see what we can find. The way you remove the striker, you press this little plastic piece in here and then remove the plastic backplate. And then the assembly just comes out. Look at that. We can see that the firing pin has completely snapped off. There is no tip there to impact the primer. Look at the jagged metal there where it fractured. So yeah, we weren't seeing impacts on the primers because there wasn't enough of a protrusion remaining to actually contact the primer at the back of the round. Now that we've pretty firmly diagnosed the problem, let's put everything back together. Of course, you put the striker assembly back in, and we've got to get this plate back on. You push that in with your finger or a punch, and you can get the plate back in its little track. I'm going to have to hold it closer to my body to actually do that. So here we'll push that in like so. And on goes the plate. And then everything else is business as usual. Before I give you my analysis of the situation, let's talk about how CZ handled it. Every company, regardless of how great they are, make lemons every now and again, but the customer service you receive once you discover that you have a lemon is what makes all the difference. I called CZ and they told me that they couldn't help me without my serial number. I had specifically called them from work on purpose without the number because I once broke a firing pin in another gun from another manufacturer, and that manufacturer was so apologetic that they sent me the firing pin and all adjacent parts for free, no questions asked, despite the fact that I put something like 10,000 rounds through the gun before it broke. This is important because firing pins are obviously critical to the gun working, and a firing pin breaking it's a sign of a metallurgical problem far more often than it's a sign of somebody having done something wrong with the gun. But that's okay. I called them back later that day with the serial. No big deal. I understand that every company has their own policies regarding that sort of thing, and you know, it totally makes sense. But still, I just wanted to see how they would handle that. So first, they had some trouble figuring out what arrangement of parts to send me. I wanted the whole striker assembly in case there was a problem with any of the other parts, you know, like maybe some micro fractures, that sort of thing. They couldn't do that, or they didn't have the whole assembly or something to that effect. I didn't exactly understand, and I was put on hold a lot. So then I was transferred to a gunsmith. And he told me that they didn't have the striker in stock, and he couldn't tell me when they would be back in stock. I was repeatedly passed from person to person and back again, and according to my phone, the call lasted 37 minutes, most of which was spent on hold. At one point, I was directed by a gunsmith to the CZ website and told to sign up to be notified when the striker was back in stock so that I could buy it. And I strongly suggested to him that it would be best if I was sent the striker for free, as the gun is under warranty and the firing pin snapped off after just under 3,000 rounds. Sorry, that really rubbed me the wrong way. But more than that, I found the lack of parts to be completely unacceptable, and I told them so. I told them that it's crazy to not have strikers on hand for a defensive pistol, let alone how unacceptable it is that the striker broke at all on what is supposed to be a very durable pistol fit for defense, duty, or combat. I told them that I had filmed the breakage, and I pointed out that this essentially makes the pistol worthless. Without a firing pin and without the means to get a new firing pin, you just have a lump of metal and plastic. So at this point, I was put back on hold, and they were able to find a complete striker assembly, which is on its way here now. So they didn't have one, and then they had one when I told them that I filmed it. I don't like that. What if somebody who didn't have it on film had called? Or what if it had broken on a day that I wasn't filming? Would they have not been able to locate me one? And look, of course, they asked me if I would like to send the gun in. But if they didn't have a striker there, how long was that going to take? There's not much difference who's in possession of the gun if there's no striker to be had in the United States. So after giving them my necessary information, I told the customer service rep that I have a moral obligation to put out this video, and he didn't seem in the least bit bothered by that. So before we start analyzing what happened, this is why I put so many rounds through guns. Shooting 300 rounds just doesn't give you the full story. But anyway, let's talk about all this. Some notes about CZ customer service. Some of the folks that I talked to were outstanding. Others were not. But I will say, at no point was anyone rude. And at no point did they ever ask me to not put out this video. So really, it just seems like more than anything, they're just disorganized without any sort of clear customer service framework. And HK can be a bit like that depending on who you talk to, I've found. But I was bothered that they just didn't seem to care that this is a huge deal. I pointed out that, let's say some of you who might have watched my original review, maybe you bought one of these, and maybe this is your only defensive pistol. Maybe this is your everyday carry pistol, the gun that sits on your nightstand, and then the firing pin breaks. So I only discovered that it broke because I go to the range 3 times a week. What if you only go once a month? What if your obligations in life are such that you can't go that often? You would never know that the gun is broken because look, it still dry fires. Only the trigger feels a little bit strange. And I've spent so much time with this gun. Had I not, I'm not sure that I would have noticed that the trigger felt odd. It feels weird, but it doesn't feel that weird. So let's say you're in a situation, you've drawn the gun to defend yourself and nothing. What then? Sometimes, as I note in the video, I defend my home with this gun also. So what if the night before my range trip, someone had broken into my house and click? So obviously there's that. But what about the part not being in stock with no clear delivery date? What the fuck? If Glock did this or Beretta or HK, it would be completely unacceptable. So it's unacceptable when CZ does it. It's the fucking striker. That's a pretty critical part of the gun, don't you think? So let's go back to that company that I mentioned before who sent me the firing pin. That was Ruger, my Mark IV. No questions asked. They sent me a little baggie that contained a firing pin and assorted other little Ruger bits. And by the next weekend, my gun worked. And it took 10,000 rounds for that to happen. And that was a big deal to Ruger. That's not even a defensive gun, but they treated it like it was the most important thing in the world, all for a .22 target pistol. They will rush to send you parts or a return label, anything to make you happy. They don't care when you bought the gun or how much you've shot it. I have a moral obligation to show you things like this when they happen. I'm really hard on guns for this reason. This is exactly why I put so many rounds through new designs. And if you own one of these, it's unlikely that all of the firing pins have metallurgical problems. However, I would recommend that you buy striker assemblies when they happen to be in stock. Hell, buy a few of them. That's what I'm going to do. I'm sorry to make a negative video, and I know there aren't funny pictures and jokes like you usually get, but this is fucking serious, and I hope it's helpful to all of you all the same. And if you bought a P10 C because I encouraged you to, I'm very, very sorry. I made a mistake. And in the future, I'm not going to recommend a gun that I've put less than 3,500 rounds through. And if that's not enough, hell, we'll say 5,000. So going forward, here's what I'll say about the P10 C. If you have one with a firing pin that was made correctly, you have an extremely reliable gun. I never experienced any other malfunction. But you need to keep checking your firing pin. Look around online. Other people have had this happen as well, so keep a spare. CZ will eventually get this sorted out. Every pistol has teething problems. But companies are defined by how they deal with difficulties, and CZ is not dealing with this very well. I love you, CZ. I love your products, but this is not up to the high standard that you ought to hold yourselves to. Ruger bent over backwards to fix the firing pin of my target pistol. I could tell that it really mattered to them that gets sorted out and in a timely manner. And when I called CZ, I just got the impression that nobody really gave a shit. And that bothered me. because I love this pistol, and I know a lot of you love it as well. And it's frankly an outstanding pistol as long as the firing pin doesn't snap off. Like I said, when the firing pin is intact, this is my favorite striker-fired pistol. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for watching. Again, sorry for the lack of jokes, but you see why. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.